That is actually so hilarious. I was watching my own video from a year ago in which I discussed what should be fixed from NHL 23 going into NHL 24, and today we're doing that exact same video but in terms of NHL 25 and what should be fixed going from 24 to 25. Now, the absolutely hilarious thing is basically nothing I thought should be fixed for NHL 24 was actually fixed. So, alright, so before we get into this, I'm only gonna be talking about gameplay. Like, yes, they should bring back GM Connected and Winter Classic and all of that, but I think we have enough content in just gameplay issues. So let's dive into it. Here is my NHL 25 gameplay wishlist, aka EA, I'm telling you exactly what to do to make NHL 25 into a good game, so please listen up. Let's begin with number 1. They should just remove the pressure system. It pretty much doesn't even do anything anymore because they had to nerf it like 10 times throughout the year, but I think we can all agree it should just be removed at this point. The one thing that did come with the pressure system that I'm fine with staying is the goalie stamina bars. I just wanted to get the obvious one out of the way. Now moving on to the most important thing on this list, and that is the goalies and ways to score in the game. This was my number 1 issue last year as well. So basically, I'm talking about one-timers. The goalies should honestly have no business saving most of these. Like, sure, every now and then have the goalie save one like that, but come on, how is some 6'7", 49 overall goalie you've never heard of before move like that? I do think NHL 24 kind of took a step in the right direction with at least some snipes going in more often, but for the one-timers, the goalies are still way too good on those side-to-side plays. For me, the issue isn't really even the fact that the goalie can save it when you just make one simple pass across and shoot a one-timer, but like, they're almost immune to being outplayed by passes. Like, you can make 4 passes across and the goalie will still be there in time to save the one-timer. And it's not even that the goalie is overreacting to the pass, because that would mean you would be able to wait the goalie out and shoot back to the side he came from, but that isn't even necessarily true most of the time. Now, waiting out the goalie like that does work quite often as well, but my point really is that even in those cases, the goalie wasn't like needing to sprawl out to try and save the one-timer. He's usually just there in time for the one-timer. Overall, to fix this, I wouldn't mind them to just slow the goalies down a lot, but if you really want to spice things up, make there be a big difference between smaller goalies and bigger goalies. So basically, if you made the smaller goalies considerably faster than the bigger goalies at moving across, which is pretty realistic if you ask me, bigger goalies would still probably have the advantage in things like snipes from further out and like tips and maybe rebounds or something like that. But if the smaller goalies were actually fast, that would also give people the incentive to use smaller goalies, because they would actually be better at doing some things than bigger goalies. Because right now, even the big goalies are moving across really fast, and there's not really a huge difference between the smaller and the bigger goalies in terms of anything, to be honest. The bigger goalies just cover more of the net, really. That's the only difference at the moment. Other than the goalies being too good on one-timers, I felt like NHL 24's goal scoring was pretty good. At this point, we ran into a little bit of a problem in the recording, but basically the last point here I made was that there is a whole lot of just bad goals that bounce off of a defender or the goalie and in. And I feel like that is because the backdoor one-timer is really the only one that is going consistently in. So in general, what I think they should do is ever so slightly nerf the goalies, and then ever so slightly buff the defense. Firstly, that would promote a more active defensive playstyle. Secondly, for offense, if your opponent wasn't properly defending, you could actually punish them with multiple ways of scoring. And then most importantly, there would be more variety in the goals scored. And in best case scenario, the amount of goals doesn't even go up. You just make the portion of the bad goals smaller than it has been in NHL 24 and in most previous NHLs, to be honest. Now, one last thing when it comes to the goalies / the goal scoring ways in the game, I also played around with this idea in my last year's video. What if the goalies weren't as predictable? In the current NHL 24 gameplay, we, especially the ones who play this competitively, pretty much know exactly what kind of a shot does go in and what doesn't. We kind of know that this will go in and this won't, even though there's really no justification for one of those shots being legitimately just better than the other. And this is just because the goalies, they don't have like any variety in the way they play a situation. Every time they see the exact same situation, they react the exact same way. So my idea is, what if they didn't play like that? What if they were much more dynamic? Like there could be just some like very tiny little variable added where the goalie just plays ever so slightly differently every time. Something like that could literally end glitch goals, basically. Because basically, every glitch goal relies on the goalie making the same mistake every time you make the same play. Like this goal in NHL 23 was just about the fact that the goalie moved the exact same way off the post every single time. And the same applies for a goal like this as well, where the goalie is just systematically always standing a little bit too much to one side. Now, honestly, I don't think they're gonna do that. And also, I'm not sure how it would play. Because if you think about it, that also would take a lot of the current skill gap in the game away, because a lot of the skill gap is in you knowing the patterns of the goalies and everything, right? But I do think that's kind of the general trend where the game is going. NHL 24 had way less glitch goals than NHL 23, to be honest. And I'm guessing the same pattern's gonna continue. But yeah, this is probably getting a little bit off topic, to be honest. So to sum up what the goalies need to be like in NHL 25, nerf them, especially on the cross-ice movement, especially for the big goalies. And even more especially when there's multiple passes and the goalie has to move side to side multiple times. There, especially, the goalies shouldn't be as good as they are in NHL 24. Now moving on to the third thing, and that is defense. First of all, hitting is weird. I'm not exactly sure what they did, but I feel like hitting was better before NHL 24, but I can't exactly tell you what's wrong with it. Well, there's one thing that is obviously wrong with the hitting, and that is the speed boost you get for winding up for a hit. That should obviously be removed. I honestly don't understand how they were able to make hitting less balanced than it was in NHL 23, though. If you don't count the speed boost, which they should remove, because, I mean, why are you getting a speed boost from going for a hit? That just doesn't make sense. But other than that, the hitting isn't too good or too bad, in my opinion. It's pretty close to being as good as it should be. It's just a little bit off. The physics just don't feel exactly right, I guess. So remove the speed boost. But if you did only that, then hitting would be actually too bad. So I think they have to do something to make hitting better. But I mean, the speed boost is not the thing that should be in the game to make hitting better. Just the hitting just has to be what it used to be. That would already be a lot better. So hitting definitely needs some sort of adjustments. But on the other hand, stick checking in NHL 24 is actually in a pretty good place right now, I would say. I would like to see them give some more love to the defensive skill stick to make it at least better than the regular poke check, just to promote manual defense. The current defensive skill stick can't really even be used the way it was intended to work, because you can't hold on to the defensive skill stick for too long because you just lose all your speed. Now, yes, it was too good when you could just hold down the defensive skill stick forever and just run around the ice holding the poke check out, but I feel like they did it a little bit too harsh of a nerf, and I feel like it should be somewhere at like 90% speed that you can skate when you hold the defensive skill stick, because at the moment it feels like it's a lot less than that. Buffing the speed while doing it would be one thing, but also, for example, I would love to be able to use the defensive skill stick more effectively to cover passing lanes. I don't know how they would do it, but like at the moment, you technically can intercept a pass holding the defensive skill stick and just aiming it to the puck. But I mean, practically speaking, that is just way too difficult to do. So I wouldn't mind there to be some sort of an adjustment made that made your defensive skill stick intercept passes, basically. I don't know exactly what they should do, really, but actively defending a cross crease should be possible, which brings me to the next point, which is interceptions. I mean, this still goes into the category of defense, so we're still on the third point, but third point of the third point. Now, overall, the interceptions in NHL 24 are pretty good, but there's always a but. There definitely should be a distinction between an intentional and an unintentional interception in the game. Take these two scenarios for an example. So imagine two passes that are technically exactly the same, but one is made on a 2-on-1 where the defender is reaching for the pass to intercept it, and the other one is, let's say, on the breakout, where the opponent, yes, he's in position to technically be able to somehow intercept that, but he's not really looking to intercept that pass. Now, the million-dollar question is, in which situation is it more likely that the defensive team is able to pick off that pass? Well, it's in the one where they're waiting for the pass. On the breakout, they might just not even be considering that passing option, but when it's a 2-on-1, the defender already knows who the pass is going to go to if there is a pass made. So really the issue with interceptions in NHL 24 isn't that they're too bad, it's that they are too bad in some situations, and, well, it's kind of pushing it saying they're too good, but I'm actually kind of thinking that they're a little bit too good in other situations. Well, actually, now that I think about it, yes, they are too good in some situations. Like, have you noticed if you take a slap shot, let's say you're on the penalty kill, you take a slap shot from your own end, the amount of times the AI will just catch the puck midair and intercept it like that, in those situations, the interception is too good. The same can be said about saucer passes and, well, normal passes as well. There's sometimes just an AI defensive player just happens to be kinda close to the passing lane and just reaches out to make some sort of a crazy behind the back stretch to pick it off. So I do think there should be a very clear distinction between intentional or unintentional interceptions. Now, I wouldn't hate a system where they just boost the human player's interception rate compared to the AI, but that would also have its flaws. So I do think the only way to actually address this is to have a dedicated pass interception command. So either like its own button that you hold down to boost your interceptions, or something I was talking about earlier, the defensive skill stick. What if you point the defensive skill stick onto a passing lane and the game automatically notices that you're trying to cover that passing lane and moves your stick to intercept that pass when it comes? I'm not sure if they even can implement it like that, but there really needs to be some sort of a way to get rewarded when you actually know where your opponent is going to pass. And at least for me, really the only issue with the interceptions right now is that when I actually know where my opponent is passing, and that is all I'm trying to defend. I'm doing my best to try and defend it, and I still can't do it. So those are the situations where there should be some sort of a tool to make the interceptions better. Outside of those situations, so when you're just like accidentally in the way of a pass, I think the interceptions are pretty good right now. I wouldn't change them too much. Because also, if they just keep boosting the interception rates, we're just gonna see even more of what's happening right now, where the AIs are catching slap shots midair and just reaching their skate in front of every saucer pass. I feel like it's already like pushing it to being too far like that. But there really needs to be something for those times when you're actually trying to defend a play. Now on to the fourth and final, well, it's actually not the final thing on this list, but it's the final thing that I have a lot to say about on this list. So the fourth and final like big category on this video. They should bring back a mechanical skill gap into the game. Now, what am I talking about when I say that? First of all, total controls. This is a very interesting thing. So initially, I thought that total controls was actually a good idea, just to make it easier for players to learn to do new things in the game, basically, right? I know a lot of people will agree with me on this one, but I also know a lot of people will probably disagree with this one, because I would have disagreed with myself a year ago. But basically the issue isn't total controls themselves, but the fact that now everyone knows how to do a Michigan. It's not even about the fact that everyone can do the Michigan, because everyone could do the Michigan on skill stick as well. But it's about everyone constantly knowing you can just tap one button and do it. It shouldn't be easy, right? Like, there should be some sort of a learning curve to achieve the most difficult dig in hockey, basically, right? And I really do understand the counterpoint to this as well. And I used to also think that, like, yeah, just make everything as easy as possible. But if everything is super easy, then everyone's gonna do it. Like, that's the issue. Now I've started to think about, it wouldn't even be terrible if the Michigan was even more difficult to do on skill stick, and then there was no total control. So everyone had to learn something very difficult, because that would also make it actually cool. Like, if it was actually difficult to do, like mechanically, then it would be cool to do, right? I think to explain this whole mechanical skill gap thing, it's actually better to use the hip check as an example compared to the Michigan. So the hip check is currently pretty hated online. At least that's what I've heard. People are saying that the hip check is OP. But here's the thing. It's like never been worse than it is right now. Well, maybe in NHL 23, but multiple NHLs before 23, the hip check was much more OP than it is right now. Like, actually. So why wasn't the hip check? I'm sure there was a lot of people who did hate the hip check back then. But why wasn't it more hated than it is right now? The reason is because it actually required, well, it wasn't that much skill. You just press two buttons down and it does it. But people kind of thought it was like a high skill thing, you know? So yeah, I never would have thought I'm saying this, but there should be some difficult things to do in NHL that actually got you some sort of an advantage. Example, saucer passes. There used to be this one play where you have one player with the puck, and then you have a player on the back door, and you just sauce the puck to the backdoor player and tap it into the empty net. Now, that actually required some skill. At least in my opinion, it wasn't super difficult to do. So people could at least try it, but even the best would occasionally just mechanically aim the saucer a little bit wrong, and they wouldn't get the goal. So yeah, that saucer in some previous NHLs, it was too good because interceptions on saucers were pretty much non-existent, but I do think it was still kind of good for the game, because it was a way you could actually just, with pure skill basically, just get a free goal. Currently that play doesn't work for two reasons. First of all, every single saucer gets intercepted basically, and even if you manage to land that pass backdoor, the goalie is going to save it because they're so fast moving across. No saucer is fast enough backdoor for you to tap it in, basically. And by the way, I'm not saying we should just go back to like 5 years ago and have every single saucer backdoor be a goal. But you know what I mean? Like, in general, some sort of a mechanical skill gap where you can actually get an advantage from just being good at the game, you know? And I know at this point some people will be pointing at me like, oh yeah, of course this guy wants that because he knows how to do it and he would just abuse saucer's backdoor. But it's not about that. It's actually not about that. For me, it's mostly about the fact that if I get scored on, by something that actually requires skill to do, I can actually like accept that much better than how I can accept like 99% of the goals everyone's scoring online against me, because the game just doesn't really have any sort of goals that in my books take skill. Like honestly, at the moment, the top players, which I'm not, by the way, I'm not one of the players that keeps winning tournaments or anything, but a lot of them at the moment are just getting a ton of hate for how they play. But it's not their fault, really, because there's like nothing you can do in the game that gives you an advantage for being a good player. Now it's just the same stuff over and over. And pretty much that has to change for the average person to have any sort of respect for the top players. And I totally get why nobody respects the top players at the moment, even though they are unbelievably gifted and are doing little things in the game that other people aren't doing that require a lot of skill. Most people don't even realize that. But there's like nothing very clear in the game where you can point out, okay, that guy is really good. Like it's pretty hard to even notice when someone is actually good at the game at the current moment. So yeah, that pretty much sums it up. And by that, I mean there's about 10 more things I want to talk about, so we'll go through them pretty quickly here. So here's about 10 things, maybe a little bit less, of things that these aren't very major points, but just little things that I think could make the game a little bit better. First one, they removed one of my favorite ways to play defense just a couple of years ago, and that is just basically standing in my opponent's way. They would just lose the puck and I would be right there to pick it up. And that was just like one of my favorite ways to play defense. But at the moment, for some reason, if you don't poke, you don't stick lift, or you don't bump the opponent, it's pretty rare that the opponent even loses the puck for a second if they just skate into you, which I don't really like it. But I mean, on offense, it's pretty cool to be just able to skate through your opponents, basically. But yeah, I think it would make the game a little bit better if there was a little bit more loose pucks when you run into opponents with the puck, basically. I didn't get the start of this clip, but the second point is about line changes. Especially because I'm pretty sure they also made the energy drain quicker in this year's game. It just feels like you constantly have to change lines. I'm not saying there should be no energy bar. I'm not saying energy shouldn't be lost when you're skating or anything. Maybe make the energy bars drain a little bit slower, just so you can keep the same players on the ice for a little bit longer, because it just feels like Line Change Simulator 24 at this point. The third point, which is actually for a lot of people, this is probably point number 1 on their list, which is that the AI is so stupid. And I'm linking this to the line changes as well. There's always that one dude, that one AI that will just never go off the ice. You change lines like 3 times, and that one dude just stays on the ice for no reason. Yeah, I think you guys know what I'm talking about, but yeah, basically, AI is just very bad. It is just very bad. And the line changing is not the worst part about the AIs, don't get me wrong, but yeah, that was just something funny that always seems to happen to me. I just never seem to be able to get that one player off the ice, no matter how hard I try. All right, next up, something I actually loved that they added to NHL 24, which is one-touch passing. But there's a problem. So basically, you used to be able to pass directly after a pass. So you could pass, and while the puck was just about to reach your next player, you could tap pass button again, and immediately as your player picks it up, he passes it again. Now that doesn't work anymore. So now what happens is, if you pass again before your player receives the previous pass, the player will try to do a one-touch pass. And in many cases, they're not positioned so that they can get a proper pass off. So in those situations, we're actually in a worse situation than what it was in like NHL 21. NHL 21's passing, you could basically do one-touch passes because it was so fast. if you passed it right away when you got the puck with the next player. So even though I absolutely love the one-touch pass, I do actually prefer the old way, just because you didn't have to think about which way your player is facing and all that. And the next point also kind of applies to passing as well, but every time you pick the puck up in NHL 24, there's a little bit of a delay before you're able to do something. So basically the same thing with passing. If you don't do a one-touch pass, if you just pick it up and then pass again, there's always that little bit of delay before your player actually does it. For me personally, the worst situation is when I'm picking up a loose puck and I want to do a deke right away when I pick it up. And there's always that little bit of delay. And sometimes that's the difference between me completing the deke, or just because there is that delay, my opponent is able to hit me off the puck, you know? Also, this next thing, this infuriates me like crazy. Why, when you go down in the dive block, is there space between the stick and the ice? Why would the players always keep their stick in the air? Or not from the end, but like, you know what I'm saying? There's always space to pass the puck under. And there's also space under the skates. And also there's space under the chest, which that one is the craziest one. In my opinion, in a video game, it would be better for everyone if we just had the whole player character cover the ice. Because that's what you're trying to do, right? Also, there's still like AI penalties, elbowing calls, interference, and cross-checking penalties when you're only trying to shoot the puck in the offensive zone. And yeah, also like 50% of the goals scored are like own goals off the skate of your defender and in, or something like that. So yeah, that's fun also. And also, let me go into a little bit of a rant here at the end. What is going on with EA seeing an issue in their game, and instead of fixing the issue directly, they do something completely different to make that problem less of a problem? Let me explain this. Okay, so in NHL 23, we had this glitch shot. For NHL 24, they didn't fix it. Like, it still works. So basically all they did was nerf backskating, which we could get into backskating here as well. Do we want to talk about backskating a little bit? I think we do. So yeah, anyway, all they did was nerf backskating. They actually didn't do anything about this glitch shot. Instead, they just limited the amount of times people are able to use it, basically, because most of the time people use it while backskating, right? But hey, at least they fixed the issue, right? Except they didn't. We saw this goal all the time in the ECL tournament in NHL 24. So yeah, EA just saw this issue and then went like, okay, let's not do anything about it, except let's mess with backskating. But also, the second thing they fixed was backskating itself. So in previous NHLs, you could backskate really smoothly from either side, cutting in like this. Guess what they did to fix this? They literally kept it exactly the same, except they basically disabled it from one of the sides. So you can still perfectly ballerina your way to the front of the net from one side, but from the other side, the game just says, okay, you can't backskate from here. Just a wild thought. Maybe, just maybe, there could have been something different to combat this situation we had with backskating. I don't know. Just throwing out ideas here. Third thing that they fixed. Well, this one they actually did fix, I guess. I'll give them credit for that. And that is the self-sauce, which actually I don't think it was really an issue, because the whole point of the self-sauce was to get a speed advantage, because your player would skate faster without the puck than with it. And that's pretty realistic if you ask me. Like, in real life, the players don't stick handle the puck all the time when they are skating full speed. If they have a lot of room, they'll just push the puck forward to themselves and then skate after it. But anyways, for the sake of the argument, let's say we want to remove the self-sauce, which I'm fine with that. Let's remove the self-sauce. To do this, EA decided to boost the minimum saucer pass power. Now, this still allows players to self-sauce off the boards. This still allows people to self-sauce behind the back, which I do all the time. But the issue with this doesn't even have anything to do with the self-sauce. It's just the fact that this just made saucer passing much worse, at least for myself. This leads to situations where I want to do a drop pass behind me, and a regular drop pass would be too slow, I guess. So my player is too far away to pick it up from just a regular drop pass. So instead of a drop pass, what I would do was a little saucer, and I could also aim it. That was the best part about all of this. You could direct your saucer pass a little bit to one side or the other instead of dropping it right there where your player is. But now the saucer pass, the slowest possible saucer pass, is sometimes too powerful, and I'm literally unable to pass where I want to pass. For most people, this is probably not an issue, but I actually really have a problem with EA just taking away the possibility of passing where you want to, because that's literally what it is. Now, the best part is, after they already had done this change, they already boosted the saucers to remove self-saucing. They came up with an update to boost puck carrier speed. Now, first of all, I did not think that's a good update. But the crazy thing is, now they literally removed the only reason to even do a self-sauce in the first place. Because now you don't even get any advantage for skating without the puck compared to having the puck. You know what I'm saying? There's no point to even self-sauce anymore. And the thing people don't even understand, for me, this is legitimately not about the self-sauce. It's about those small saucers that are now just not in the game. I think the game is actually better without self-sauces, but I think the game is much worse without the small saucers to your own players, you know? Like, I don't mind the self-sauce being gone, but I do mind what they took with it, right? So they fixed the issue with the wrong solution. Now, also, there was an issue with goalies freezing up on self-sauces, so yeah, they did have to get rid of the self-sauces. But is there really no other way to do it instead of removing all slow saucer passes? And that's really the point. I feel like EA has fixed a lot of issues by breaking something else, if that makes sense. It's kind of also what they did with the goalies after NHL 22, when they thought there was an issue with too many one-timer goals. So they just boosted the hell out of goalies for NHL 23, and now they save practically all one-timers, when it's not a goalie issue. Like, that's the thing. They fixed it with the wrong solution once again. I guess this goes back to point number 2 on this video, which was goalies and goal scoring ways. And it should be the defenders stopping those plays. And that's why I would love to have more defensive tools, buff the defense, but nerf the goalies. The goalies shouldn't be saving that. Now, after saying all of that, I think NHL 24 is the best NHL game we've ever had. Like, believe it or not, I actually believe that. The core gameplay is actually really good, in my opinion. The goal scoring ways are a little bit better than they were in NHL 23. 22 was a little bit sluggish, if that makes sense. 21 didn't have any interceptions, and pretty much all games before then had so many glitches that, like, you can't really even compare something like NHL 14 to 24. I actually played NHL 14 again just a couple of months ago, and a lot of people think that's the best NHL game ever. But if they just released NHL 14's gameplay next year, I mean, that's the worst game ever. Like, it was really good for its time, but if it was released today, it is completely unplayable almost compared to 24. Like, you can't even skate in that game. But man, I'm really frustrated by the fact that I genuinely think they have the core things down pretty well already. And now it's basically just changing the variables of the game. Like, most of the things I talked about in this video don't require a completely rebuilt game. They just require a little bit of tweaking, basically. What's crazy to me is, like, year after year, it feels like they make a better game, but then there's a couple of things that they actually make worse. And the really frustrating thing is, they've had this right at some point. Something like the goalies from NHL 22. I think NHL 24 with NHL 22 goalies would be an unbelievable game already. And all the other things that are wrong currently have been better in the past, like bring back hitting from, I don't know, 23, 19, some other game. You could just make a really good game by combining a bunch of already existing NHLs. On the other hand, I'm like praising EA that, yeah, your game is close to being really good, but at the same time, what are you doing? Every single year you mess something else up when you fix one thing. That pretty much wraps up this video. So thank you for watching, first of all. Do leave comments if you think there's something I completely just missed. Or just comment on what are your thoughts on my analysis of what should be changing for NHL 25. I'm walking away from NHL 24 with a pretty positive mindset. I think the game wasn't bad. It wasn't as good as we thought it was gonna be prior to launch. But overall, I think it's still the best game we've ever had. And if they just get a few little things right, the game is already a lot better. As long as they just don't mess up everything else while doing it. I wonder if people even noticed that I've been like sick this week. Like my voice is nowhere near being able to talk for this long. So therefore, I am going to end this video right now.